Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to show you how to replace your pads and rotors on your car at home. Alright, so to make this a little easier, I broke this up into 4 simple steps. So first, what we're going to do is we're going to lift up the vehicle and remove the wheels. Second, we're going to remove the brake caliper and clean them up. And then third, we're going to remove the brake rotor, clean up the hub surface. And then lastly, we're going to reverse everything and put it all back together. Step 1 is complete. We've got the vehicle up safely and it's on jack stands. So now we're going to go ahead and remove the wheel. Now with the wheel off, we can get a better view of our caliper, our brake pads just in here, and our actual rotor itself. So we can see this rotor has a lot of rust on it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the caliper, and at the back here you can see these dust boots right here. So we're going to pop the cover off, and then in here we can see that there is a hex bolt. So we're going to get a hex driver on that and we're going to get that taken out. There's one up here and then there's another one at the bottom right here. So with the T40, we're just going to grab this, break it free, and it should slide right on out. And then the same thing on the top here, we get them pulled out. We can remove this retaining clip right here. So to remove this, all we're going to do is take a flathead, pry it in, and it'll pop right out. Alright, so getting this clip off sometimes can be a little finicky, but if you just push it in like that, and you can stick a flathead right up here, and it pops right out just like that. And also guys, while we wait, we're just going to grab some WD-40 and spray this bolt, because this bolt is usually seized in and we want to give it the best chance of coming out clean. So just a little bit of WD-40 on that and we can work on the caliper. So once you have those 2 bolts out, we're going to grab a flathead and we're going to pry the caliper off of the brake rotor. So just by using the old pads, because they're going to get replaced, and just like this, we've got the old caliper off. So when you have your caliper off, you want to grab a bucket or maybe a bungee cord and tie this up. This is because you don't want to put any tension on this brake line, which can cause it to damage or maybe even leak. So we want to make sure that the caliper is always supported when it's off the car. To take the brake pads out, we're going to see that we just pop them out. So the one at the front, it shouldn't have any clips on it. This one is a little seized. And then if we find that it's a little stuck, we can grab a flathead and just pry it off, just like that. And get rid of this one. And the back one has a clip on it, so it just clips into the actual piston. And in this case, on the BMW, we also have a sensor. We're going to replace the sensor anyways, so we're just going to break it off right now, just like that. And now we have this brake caliper bracket, which we have to remove next. So to remove this, it's very similar. It's just going to be this one bolt here, and there's a bolt right down there if you can see it. Remove these 2 bolts. We're going to need a breaker bar or a very long ratchet, because they are going to be pretty tight on there. So once we remove that, we can remove this bracket here, and then it will give us enough space to remove our brake rotor. A little trick I like to use is to turn the wheel from the inside all the way to the direction you need. So that way we have all this extra space to remove this giant nut. So now with these 2 bolts out, we're going to spin the rest off by hand, and then you can see this entire bracket just comes off like that. Now with the bracket off, we're going to grab our wire wheel or wire brush, and we're going to clean up these surfaces here. It's because these brake pads actually slide along these. After that, we're just going to grab a little bit of this brake lubricant. We're going to apply some on all 4 sides, and just a thin layer, because if you apply too much, it can pick up road grime and it can cause your brakes to stick. So with our wheels straight, we're going to grab our Allen head, just put it into place, and then we're also going to grab a hammer. Before we go and try to remove this, we know that it's super stuck on, so we're going to grab a hammer and just pound on it a little bit. This will help loosen up the rust, and it'll also help the socket seat inside the bolt itself. And then we can grab our ratchet and pray that this comes off. Just a couple of love taps and that comes right off. Beautiful. So we have that bolt off, and now this rotor, if you're not in a rust climate, it will fall right off. But in this case, since this rotor is probably rusted to the hub, what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab our hammer again and just tap it. And you can see that was enough to remove this rotor. So from factory, these brake rotors come with this oil on the actual rotor itself to keep it from rusting when it's sitting on the shelf. But we have to get rid of that because we don't want oil on our braking system. So we're gonna grab our brake clean, spray it down, and then wipe it clean. So spray some brake cleaner. Be generous. And grab a clean rag. And we're just gonna wipe those oils right off. And then we're gonna do the same thing on this side. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna clean up this surface here. And this is because when we go to install the rotor, we don't want some piece of debris just sitting here. It'll cause the rotor to run out of round, and it may cause some type of vibrations. And it can also cause your brand new rotors to warp, which we don't want. So now that we've cleaned it off with our wire brush, we can grab our brake cleaner and just spray it down. Again, we want to get rid of any debris that's going to be sitting on this hub. Otherwise, it can cause the rotor to warp. There we go. So I'll let that dry off. And what we're going to do is we're going to grab some anti-seize and just apply some, just a little bit around the hub itself. This is because next time we go to replace our brake rotors, they'll come off easy and we won't even need to hammer them off. Our new brake rotor is ready to go back on. So we can get it up and then we can line up this set screw right here. And then a trick I like to use is by grabbing one of the lug nuts just before we put that set screw and just screwing that in. All right, so we're gonna grab some of our anti-seize again and then apply some to that recess that this set bolt sits in. And what I like to do is I like to replace the set bolt every time I remove it. So I've got a brand new one from BMW. And then once we have it in, we can grab some more anti-seize and just put some on top right there. This will help it from rusting again, and then the next time you take it out, it'll come out much easier. So perfect, we have the rotor on, ready, and now what we have to do is we have to get this brake caliper bracket back on. So remember, it's just those two bolts. So we're just gonna line it up. Perfect. Now we can get our bolts in. Start them off by hand, both of them. So I went ahead and turned my wheel again to give me better access. Now I can grab my torque wrench and we're gonna torque these two bolts down to 80 foot-pounds. Click. And then same thing for the bottom. Now those two bolts are torqued down and this caliper bracket is in place. Now we can move on to the actual caliper itself. So we have to compress this piston, and that's because the new pads are thicker than the old ones. So if we go and try to install them with the piston out like this, the new pads are not going to fit. So to compress this, you can get a special tool. It pushes this piston out. But in my case, I don't have that tool, so I'm gonna show you another cool trick I like to use. So before you compress the piston, we're gonna wanna come over under our hood and open up the brake fluid reservoir. because when we compress that piston, fluid's going to come back through the system and up through here, and we want to let some air escape so it makes it easier to push that piston in. All right, so for my method without the special tool, we're going to grab our old brake pads, just set them in place as spacers, and then we're going to grab a flathead or a pry bar and just stick it through the caliper, and you can see, just apply some force and that piston compresses easily. Put this around. There we go. And then once it stops moving, that means the piston is compressed all the way. Just clean off this caliper just to get rid of all this rust, and especially right here, because this is where the pads are going to ride, here and here. So we're going to get that extra clean, apply some grease, and then we can get it back installed. So again, we just want a thin layer, not too excessive. And then we can grab our pad. The one with the clip on it clicks into the actual piston itself. You can put the second one right into the caliper bracket, just like this. And then what we're going to want to do is grab some more brake grease, and we're just going to apply some to the insides of this caliper right here, because this is going to make contact with the brake pad itself, and we want to make sure that doesn't seize together. Okay, perfect. So now we can slide the caliper onto the caliper bracket. We can get rid of our bucket. Just slide that in, and it should hold in place like that. We still have these two pins that we need to install, these two here. But before we can install them, we're going to want to wipe them down and apply some brake lubricant to them too. So we're going to grab some of our lube, just apply a thin coat, two pins just like that, and then we can slide it into this housing right here. And then we might have to move the caliper around just a bit to get it to line up. And the same thing on the bottom one. We're going to grab our torque wrench again. We're going to set it to 22 foot-pounds. And then we're going to torque this down, these two pins. Click. And then same thing with this bottom one. And then we can get these little plastic caps back on. So replacing this clip is just like how we took it off. There we go. Just use your fingers. And you want to make sure that's seated, so give it a couple of taps. And there we have it. Our brake rotors and pads have now been changed successfully. Now all we have to do is get our wheel back on and put it to the ground. Now we lower the car down just enough so the tire is touching the ground, and we can set our torque wrench to 100 foot-pounds and then tighten them down. Click. And we want to do this in a star pattern, remember. Perfect. Go over them one more time. There we have it. Our front brake is replaced. So once you've placed all of your pads and rotors, we're going to come back into the car and we're going to pump the brake pedal a few times until it starts to feel firm. This is extremely important. Do not start driving until you've done this step. There you guys have it. That's how you install brand new brakes in your car at home. So as you guys saw, it's a pretty simple process. It's really difficult to mess it up. If you have the right tools, you should be able to get it done quickly. If this is the first video you're catching in mind, please consider subscribing. And if you feel like you've learned something new or interesting, please drop a like and comment down below. I'll see you guys in the next one.